Hey Marie, so do I have any tips for drawing VFX, magic, or power concepts? Um, yes. It's a bit funny because VFX kind of falls into this kind of extracurricular activity that you do a lot of the time with your concepts. So for me, what I like to do a lot of the times is when I'm in this stage of just like sketching, I don't think about what it's going to look like, what it's going to like. I don't think about it that much. I think about it to like a surface level. Like for example, like this character could be like bending like blood or miasma or some type of liquidy substance, right? And you kind of want to think about what this power is at a more like texture level before you start thinking about like the super fantasy side of things. For example, like if you were to draw like water, you would have like an idea of what like water kind of looks like, and it like shines a certain way, and maybe there's like splashing puddles, uh, and you would just kind of draw the like surface like imaginary kind of way of that with things like light, right? You would kind of associate light with like fire to some degree. um, so you would have like an internal bit. A lot of the times like light could be like associated with the light like a ball. What I like to do is sometimes anime, or not sometimes, but usually anime has like a really good way, or like mangas have a really good way of like depicting magic through a 2D lens. So I would recommend always looking at like references in that sense, right? So this would be like fire, and then this would be the adjacent to like light, and then water, would be adjacent to any like substance, right? That is liquidy. Uh, and then you would have like rock or like ground, and you know this would be more of a texture thing than a kind of grounded, right? So if anything, you would, instead of making like this is like more liquidy, this would be like more triangles. So circle, triangle, and then rock would be like the in between, where it's the avatar elements, right? So you kind of find like shapes in that. So in this stage that I'm doing right now, I'm just kind of finding the shape and the silhouette and the form. And then when I like pick a concept, I kind of just go from there and kind of figure out what the textures and all that is. A lot of the time, like you can kind of find opportunities and extract um, shapes in different ways, right? So, or executed in a different way, right? So for me, in this particular sense, if I were to take any of these elements, for example, the liquid or whatever, I would go look for references of water, puddles, certain things like that, and then emulate that look. And then a lot of the times it's like a lot of color dodge, very shiny glows, a lot of lighting stuff. But as of right now, the only two important things that I'm focusing on is um, what it is, right? What substance it is, and then the flow of it. So how does it like flow with the character? Right now, I'm kind of if we're thinking about what I'm doing right now, I think about flow as go and then stop, right? So right now we're going, and then I could make this like part a little bit more direct, but we're stopping right here, right? And I made this specifically a triangle because it's kind of like an arrow pointing back to the character. Um, and that's a lot of the times how you can get like if you don't have something already pointing to your character, you could have like VFX elements kind of do that for you. But yeah, that's usually how I approach VFX when I'm like drawing. Uh, it's just a matter of like flow and like organizing your shapes and thoughts. Thank you for the question, by the way. Appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of the times, when it comes to paying attention to the silhouette, um, that's really what's gonna sell. Like the concept, like 9 times out of 10, is like the silhouette, the flow, how it like interacts with the character. You don't want to just make it like this shiny, like untextured object that kind of floats within space because if I were to duplicate this just for holding up an example, um, the difference between this and some part of me wanted to do it in the middle, like just kind of cut through. The only thing is like a lot of attention is kind of being brought here, so I would have to cut this out in order to like kind of get that feeling, right? But there's other mistakes or mistakes I could make, like I could just do this, right? Which has like this kind of arcing flow, but it doesn't point to anything, and if anything, it points outside of the screen. Um, I could do this where it's like, oh, I have two magic balls, or even if I wanted to keep it the substance, I have two substancey balls that don't really, connect in any particular way. Like there's no source that would make it like viable. So I just kind of like leave it to this like silhouette and having this idea of like pointing in a specific direction. Um, um, So in terms of details, a lot of the times, what I look towards or look at is like reference and things that I'm kind of like pinpointing together to add. Um, it's more of like an instinct. Sometimes like I might like the wrinkles might do like most of the legwork, or like some of the corset stuff like stitching, um, or tattered like stripes. Like you don't. It's more of like how I think about it it's is this a natural thing that would fit onto the character that isn't an accessory to it, right? So, for example, like wrinkles would naturally fit onto clothes because like they bend and they fold and they do all that stuff. Um, and then like threading and like buttoning and lacing and stuff like that. Like those are natural things that kind of construct the corset to the character. Now things like this little like kind of flaring out like ribbon like effect right here, like this is just extra. This is something I would add. Even right here like belts and buckles, that would be like a design choice. But even with the hood, like I don't have to go too crazy. And so how do you know, or how do I know? A lot of the time it comes down to like detail hierarchy. So like where do I want the viewer to look? And a lot of the times like it would be like around this area. So I would pack the most detail around there, and then maybe like right here, like the belt. Um, and then the coat, like because I how you want to think about when you're designing a character is you want the upper body to be looked at, the middle body, and then you want it to like the person to look down, and then find an opportunity for them to look up, right? So that's essentially what I'm doing. Like I'm putting enough interest right here that like the viewer will look down and be like, oh hey, the boots. And then like if you see this like kind of dress, how it does this, like because of that, like now the viewer can like look back up, and because of this like arrow pointing, so like a lot of arrows just point back to like right here, but there's enough interest down here to like look down, right? So um I'm not, if I what would it, a lot of the times when I think about like skirts and dresses, I don't go too crazy on them because like a lot of times the wrinkles do the work for me. But if I started doing like patterning here, which wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily, like patterning, and then like maybe some like different two-tone kind of designs that would kind of like cut right here and right here, and then I would have like diamonds right here and like a bunch of stuff, right? The bottom part would get cluttered, and then you have this medium, medium, medium hierarchy, and there's nowhere to like bounce up and look, right? So it's just about like knowing where you want the viewer to look the most and having some like hierarchy of detail. So a great example of detail hierarchy is one thing I want you to notice is I've only put wrinkles and relatively like the attention to detail like in this area, and if I want this design to really like stick out the most, I want to find what my biggest point of interest is, right? And so that would be this mask, right? So if I were to think about like this mask as the highest point of interest, then naturally we want to have it stick out the most. And we're gonna have like, you know, ideas and carvings and certain things that would stick out the most. Or at least this upper body area, right? So we want this mask to have its own standing, right? Can even have like, this might not work. No, I prefer this. So, yeah. Now that we have the like highest point of interest right here, like everything else, like if it just takes like a little bit of a back seat, we could just like kind of ride, and let, you know, have this design kind of like just sit on its own, right? So actually, let's um it's a little bit of both. Uh, to an extent, it's subconscious, but you would have to do it enough in order for it to be subconscious, and like kind of pointing it out, like, you know, I've I've worked let's see, about 5 years in the gaming industry, and a lot of the times, like, you'll get art directors, and you'll get, you know people have been either mentoring or whatever. They kind of like point it out more often than not. And so at a certain point becomes relatively subconscious of just like kind of knowing where to put details. It's not always perfect. I won't like give you the false notion that like I think about it or I actively do it like 24/7. Um, but it is something that like I'll have an itch, right? It's an itch that kind of like pops up where I might, like, for example, if I were to like kind of over detail this helmet, which I kind of just want like really kind of tame, right? And I would just put like this like crazy amount, which doesn't actually look too bad. However, I'm losing the attention for the mask, and so I get that itch of like, I don't want to put that there. I want to keep this really nice and sane, and making sure that that kind of registers um, more clearly to me, and then therefore the like viewer as well. So yeah, it's like a bit of an itch that you get as time goes on. That there's nothing telling me like to do that, but it is like something that like it just feels not natural to me if I make that decision in my design to like add more detail than it kind of like necessarily needs. Some artists are really good at um, kind of making a like differential details, right? So a lot of the times, what some artists will do that have like really high amounts of detail is they'll make their shapes a lot bigger and their details more spread out versus condensed, right? So for example, it's like if I had a small circle and I put little dots in here, yeah, it's going to get really cluttered really quickly, right? But if I have a big circle and I put the same number of dots, right? Let's just say that's the same number. It feels less condensed, right? So right now I'm kind of working in this medium small circle area, but there's some artists who work in big kind of circles, and so they'll have a lot more room to work with, right? Um, a lot of the times, if I think of a studio like Airship Syndicate, they're an outsourcing, I believe, studio. They do, or they do their own games too. Like they did like Battle Chasers or stuff like that. But they have like really chunky shapes, right? And to an extent, looks somewhat busy in design, but because they work with such bulbousy, chunky shapes, like they get away with it like no problem, right? Um, a lot of like stylized games go down that kind of route of just working with like chunkier chunkier shapes. um, and I think even with like military games, sometimes they get away with it, but a lot of the times that's just like in the minute details, right? Like smaller, more like they'll pick and choose their areas, right? Like they're if you look at a like military game, like their shirts are just shirts, right? They're not like anything super crazy. But then they'll have their like bulletproof vest or whatever, and that like takes up like 90% of the real estate. And their pants like super straightforward, like really simple. But yeah, they're some other tool may take up like 90% of the real estate of detail. So the idea for this character, or yeah, these characters, that a character, is they're like plague doctors that like manipulate blood magic. I'm gonna assume it's blood magic unless like I decide to make it like green toxin or whatever, and then like just mess with it and make this like nice green and red contrast. But um, let me move the mic so it's not like I'm not talking away from the mic. Um, and so yeah, right now they're just they just mess with blood vials and blood magic and stuff like that. I have a love drawing plague doctors. I think they're like really fun. They have like the unique bird aesthetic. Yeah, like with the mask and the hoods and stuff like that. Personally, a favorite of mine to do. Um, Actually, I can do some fun. Do some fun asymmetry. Actually, just put 3. And then a lot of my references have yeah. They have like gowns or the dresses, so a lot of flowy elements here. Yeah, honestly, in terms of designing, there is a lot to kind of remember. And like I said, no one's perfect. Even when you work at a job and you're like, oh yeah, like I totally got this down, and then like your art director, who's probably been working there way longer than you, who understands even more to the style that you're working for and all that stuff, they'll still give you like feedback that you got when you were like a student, right? And they're like, I feel like you should, push your flow, or I should feel like you should push this, and stuff that you kind of been like studying and like understanding like for a while. It comes up like here and there, right? But it's not as often as you would like as a student. Like I feel like at least when I was a student, I didn't understand the concept like at all. And then like after getting the job and then like kind of understanding the application to it like more directly through like industry experience, it gets easier and easier to understand, and then you end up in the position where you're kind of telling people like, yeah, just like work on flow and do all this other stuff that to you at the time was overwhelming, right? Okay, let's see. Actually, I might just do something right there. Hmm. Okay. Um, I think we are going to wrap this up. Uh, those who showed up, appreciate it. And then Marina, I hope that's how you say your name. But thank you for asking the questions. It means a lot. Appreciate it. And then in terms of your question, will I be will do any illustration rendering. So I don't know about illustration specifically with like a giant composition and like this character posed in any particular sense, because I don't really like do that much. So I won't say no. That will never happen. But it's more of a we'll see once I start like doing streaming more and I get more comfortable with it, because this is only like day 2 and kind of getting the ball rolling with this. So it's not a no, but it's a we'll see. But again, yeah, appreciate you showing up and asking all these questions. It means a lot. And so I will see you guys later. Peace, peace.